Greetings, ye children of the upper room. This Sunday is Pentecost Sunday. It is the day of the year when the church celebrates the coming of the Spirit and the dawning of the church age. It saw such men as Peter and John exit that upper room filled with a power that set hearts on fire, condemned the world system without hesitancy, and offered forgiveness to all people everywhere. The question has to be asked: did the upper room event create nice men, or did it create new men? Did the pouring out of the Spirit of Christ give men the possibility of being nicer than they were, and perhaps nicer than their non-Spirit filled neighbors? Or did that Spirit take the earthly vessel and rework it from its deepest core into something that did not previously exist at all? Again, the question boils down to: does the religion that you practice offer you a path to becoming a nicer person? Or does it promise you the glorious opportunity to be transformed into something that was not, transformed into something new, a new creation, we could say? Jeremiah 18 tells us the following: "This is the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord. Arise and go down to the potter's house, and there I will let you hear my words." So I went down to the potter's house, and there he was working at his wheel. And the vessel he was making of clay was spoiled in the potter's hand, and he reworked it into another vessel, as it seemed good to the potter to do. Then the word of the Lord came to me: "O house of Israel, can I not do with you as this potter has done, declares the Lord? Behold, like the clay in the potter's hand, so are you in my hand, O house of Israel." How many times have you witnessed to someone only to have them tell you some miserable story about a hypocrite at church, or some humiliation that was truly visited upon them by a thoughtless Sunday school teacher when they were but a child? Very rarely will you have someone say that they don't attend church anymore because of Jesus. In fact, I've never heard that. But the stories of hurt and pain received within the doors of the church are legion. Now, in a perfect world, these stories should not be. Everyone in a church should be showing Jesus' perfect love and Jesus' perfect patience all the perfect time to everyone, no matter what. And when the bridegroom presents his bride to the Father, we will finally all be glorified and perfected in his name. But until then, my heart goes out to anyone and to everyone who has been made to stumble because of the hard heart or thoughtless actions or words of someone at a church. But as much as I wish it weren't so, that is the way things are for right now. For God is not trying to make nice people, but rather he is taking our lives, putting them on the potter's wheel, and creating something new. And this new creature must have pride and ego crushed at every turn, through much spinning and through much careful attention at the hands of a loving potter. Isaiah 48 tells us, "Behold, I, God, have refined you, but not as silver. I have tried you in the furnace of affliction." C.S. Lewis, speaking about the difference between newness and niceness, writes these helpful warnings: "There is either a warning or an encouragement here for every one of us. If you are a nice person, if virtue comes easily to you, beware. Much is expected from those to whom much is given. If you mistake for your own merits what are really God's gifts to you through nature, and if you are contented with simply being nice, you are still a rebel. And all those gifts will only make your fall more terrible, your corruption more complicated, your bad example more disastrous. The devil was an archangel once. His natural gifts were as far above yours as yours are above those of a chimpanzee. But if you are a poor creature, poisoned by a wretched upbringing in some house full of vulgar jealousies and senseless quarrels, saddled by no choice of your own with some loathsome sexual perversion, nagged day in and day out by an inferiority complex that makes you snap at your best friends, do not despair. He knows all about it. You are one of the poor whom he blessed. He knows what a wretched machine you are trying to drive. Keep on. Do what you can. One day, perhaps in another world, but perhaps far sooner than that, he will fling it on the scrap heap and give you a new one. And then you may astonish us all, not least yourself, for you have learned you are driving in a hard school. Some of the last will be first, and some of the first will be last. There are mean people and nice people everywhere. God might want you to have good manners and be of refined etiquette, but those are low on his list of urgent matters, though they might indeed be on there, and probably are on that list. But they are below knocking the pride out of us so that our clay can become malleable enough to craft a new vessel. 2 Chronicles tells us the position that we must be in to expect God's presence in our life. It says, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Doesn't our land need healing? The first and foremost thing on the list is the abolition of man's pride, the complete and utter destruction of pride in man. Pride makes us fight to be first, fight to be right, fight to be applauded. It also keeps us from being able to hear criticisms and genuine help when it truly comes to us. In fact, it keeps our eyes and our ears blinded and bound so that we cannot hear God whisper to our souls the great and wondrous journey that he has planned for us. If we would humble ourselves, cast out pride at every turn, and listen. You might have heard people witness to the fact that when they finally approached the cross of Christ in spirit and in truth, and when that cross had pierced through the marrow and bone and finally revealed pride in the innermost depths for the devil's trap that it is, then they finally heard Scripture correctly and properly for the first time in their lives. It is such a thing, it is such a radical change that the only way to explain it is that the Bible became a living and breathing thing, a thing which leapt off the page and into the heart and mind and has begun turning the potter's wheel of our transformation. I have a lengthy quote from Mere Christianity about pride that I wanted to trim down a little, but found that I really couldn't without stealing the thrust of the message. It tells us what a trap pride is. Let us listen. That raises a terrible question. How is it that people who are quite obviously eaten up with pride can say they believe in God and appear to themselves very religious? I am afraid it means they are worshiping an imaginary God. They theoretically admit themselves to be nothing in the presence of this phantom God, but are really all the time imagining how he approves of them and thinks them far better than ordinary people. That is, they pay a pennyworth of imaginary humility to him and get out of it a pound's worth of pride towards their fellow men. I suppose it was of those people Christ was thinking when he said that some would preach about him and cast out devils in his name, only to be told at the end of the world that he had never truly known them. And any of us may at any moment be in this death trap. Luckily, we have a test. Whenever we find that our religious life is making us feel that we are good, above all, that we are better than someone else, I think we may be sure that we are being acted on not by God, but by the devil. The real test of being in the presence of God is that you either forget about yourself altogether or see yourself as a small, dirty object. It is better to forget about yourself altogether. It is a terrible thing that the worst of all the vices can smuggle itself into the very center of our religious life. But you can see why. The other and less bad vices come from the devil working on us through our animal nature or beast nature. But this does not come through our animal nature at all. It comes direct from hell. It is purely spiritual. Consequently, it is far more subtle and deadly. For the same reason, pride can often be used to beat down the simpler vices. Teachers, in fact, often appeal to a boy's pride, or as they call it, his self-respect, to make him behave decently. Many a man has overcome cowardice or lust or ill temper by learning to think that they are beneath his dignity. That is, they conquered it by pride. The devil laughs. He is perfectly content to see you becoming chaste and brave and self-controlled, provided all the time he is setting up in you the dictatorship of pride. Just as he would be quite content to see your chilblains cured if he was allowed in return to give you cancer. For pride is spiritual cancer. It eats up the very possibility of love or contentment or even common sense. Couldn't we use a spoonful of that during this season of strangeness? I hope this lesson has been heard in the love that it is intended. For pride will make sure that some find this lesson offensive. Pride will give you a million reasons as to why you can still cling to it and cling to Jesus at the same time, but it just isn't so. Pride can make us mean, passive-aggressive, jealous, short-tempered, and you name it. Pride is or can be the root of all the other vices. Again, Lewis describes this situation perfectly. A quick warning. Lewis is trying to offend pride at every turn in order to make his point more powerful and to reveal pride even to the reader, even while they read. He says, the point is, he wants you to know him, wants to give you himself. He's speaking of God. And he and you are two things of such a kind that if you really get into any kind of touch with him, you will in fact be humble, delightedly humble, feeling the infinite relief of having for once got rid of all the silly nonsense about your own dignity, which has made you restless and unhappy all your life. He is trying to make you humble in order to make this moment possible. Trying to take off a lot of silly, ugly, fancy dress in which we have all got ourselves up and are strutting about like the little idiots we are. Pride is a liar. It rears its ugly head and makes you demand certain things and promises that if you deliver, then you will find yourself, you will defend yourself, and you will protect yourself, when nothing could be further from the truth. Pride keeps you from peace. It stops you from finding yourself or God in heaven, and it creates in everyone it touches a childish sensitivity to every prick and prod of life. Allowing God to crush it is both the hardest and the most wonderful thing that can ever happen to you. For if you allow God to mold it, burn it, wash it out of your life, you will find that the thing that you thought was most you was actually the enemy, keeping you from ever having stillness of mind and communion with God and with others. So what does this person look like? Amazingly simple, actually. Pride would never be able to spot it, for pride is colorblind to the spiritual life. pride keeps you looking down at people, but once it has been cast out, you are finally free to lift your eyes to the horizon, but most importantly, to also tilt the head back to allow the God of light to flow into a new and empty vessel. One more Lewis quote, and then we will wrap it up. Lewis is here trying to describe what this new man, free of pride, looks like. On this view, the thing has happened. The new step has been taken and is being taken. Already the new men are dotted here and there all over the earth. Some, as I have admitted, are still hardly recognizable, but others can be recognized. Every now and then one meets them. Their very voices and faces are different from ours, stronger, quieter, happier, more radiant. They begin where most of us leave off. They are, I say, recognizable, but you must know what to look for. They will not be very like the idea of religious people which you have formed from your general reading. They do not draw attention to themselves. You tend to think that you are being kind to them when they are really being kind to you. They love you more than other men do, but they need you less. We must get over wanting to be needed. In some goodish people, that is the hardest of all temptations to resist. They will usually seem to have a lot of time. You will wonder where it all comes from. When you have recognized one of them, you will recognize the next one much more easily. And I strongly suspect, but how should I know, that they recognize one another immediately and infallibly, across every barrier of color, sex, class, age, and even of creeds. In that way, to become holy is rather like joining a secret society. To put it at the very lowest, it must be great fun. The world's gone crazy. Fear keeps us bound, and pride keeps us thinking we like it. But God has bigger, better, and more beautiful plans than you or I could possibly dream, brother and sister. Let us intentionally cast pride away from our hearts so that the potter can do the work that each of our lives so desperately needs. God bless, and I hope to see you soon.